Okay, so we have a basic mechanism for registering, for retrieving the current user, the login, logout. But really what's missing is that this is not interacting with the database at all, right? So let's map this user to an actual table in SQL, right? So we're going to annotate this as an entity. We're going to map it to a table called, we're going to call it users, okay? And we're going to map this this ID to a primary key, and we're going to make it a generated value using a strategy of generated as an identity. So we have that. We're also going to need a repository for the user. We'll say new Java class. This will be a user repository. And so this repository is going to actually be an interface, so interface. And this is going to extend a CRUD repository, so a CRUD repository that is going to CRUD users. And the primary key is an integer. I think that's it. And once we have that in the controller, now we can replace a couple of things here. So in here, instead of just blindly, logging in this person, well, actually, we are going to blindly log in this person. We're going to store it in the database, right? First, so we're going to say, let's grab the repository. So we're going to say we're going to auto-wire the user repository. And what we're going to do is that we're going to use the repository to, repository, we're going to save the user in the database, right? Once we have the user saved in the database, we're going to store that user as the currently logged in user, okay? But then when we do a current user, well, the current user is in the session, right? So we're not going to deal with that. But then in the login, we can't try and find the user based on the username and password, right? So to do that, what we could do is that in the repository, we could have a function that returns a user and retrieve it by find user by credentials, where we're going to pass a string as a username. We're going to pass a string as a password, and we're going to map this to a query that is going to do something like select user from user where username is equal to username, and where user.username is username, and user.password is equal to password. Okay, where these are placeholders that are going to be mapped to these input fields, param, and this is going to be username, and then the param here is going to be password. Right? So now this username is mapped to this username, and this password is mapped to this password. Once we have that, we can use this API in the controller. We can use it to find out in the login if this user exists. You can say user repository. Oh, wait a minute. So we say repository. We're going to find the credentials by credentials. We're going to pass user.getUsername. I'm going to pass user.password. And so that's going to return either null if they don't find the user, or the actual user from the database. If we find it, right, we can check to see if it's null or not null, right? Well, if it's null, it's going to set current user as null, right? Nobody's logged in, right? For that session, nobody's logged in. And we're going to return null, which is good. If it is not null, then we're going to make it the current user, and then that will work in the profile. So let's try it out. let's see if we have any users in the database. Let's see. Let's open up a new query. No. Let's see. Do we have anything here? Tables. Let's refresh. There's our users. Let's see if we have any users. Okay, we don't have any users. Let's register. See if we can register. Let's restart the server here. See if this blows up. Okay, so it's starting up. Let me go to my home page here, and let's click on register. And I'm going to register as Joe. What? Okay, whatever. Register. So it comes back. There's Joe. Let's go to this database. Let's do a refresh. Notice that Joe is in there now. See that? So that means that if I log out, and if I try to log in again as Joe, it comes back with Joe. And now this Joe, this current user, right, is a user that's coming now from the server, right, with an ID 1, right, which is this ID 1. So it is now using the database as a backup of who's logged in, who's stored, and whatnot, right? So there we have a place to store all these new users.